Firstly, before I start make this video, I just want to make it quite clear. I'm not talking about Enoch Burke anymore. He is a distraction. He is being used as a distraction from the matter at hand. And the whole transgender issue has nothing to do with the bigger problems we face right now. So that also those videos I made about him brought up a lot of weirdos. He's a weird kind of cult around him of people who like worship him as some kind of god. And I don't have a problem with people supporting him and things like that, but this whole weird thing of like, and the way he turns his nose up, like they put him on a pedestal so him and his family can turn their nose down on him. I've met these kind of Irish families. They care about no one but themselves. He's not there to do anything for Ireland or for kids. He's there for the Bible. You remember that. So, I'm not even going to mention him anymore. And if you have this kind of fetish for him standing outside the school gates, please take it somewhere else because I'm not interested. Ireland has much bigger fish to fry than that circus distraction. Uh, now, the main thing at hand here is that the Irish establishment, in regards to the attempt to destroy the Irish nation, they lost. They've lost. It's as simple as that. They've lost. They have lost, and it's only the means and the method of their exit that needs to be worked out. How can I say that? How do I say that? I watched a video last night from City West, and they had a protest outside the City West Hotel. There was trouble among asylum seekers the other night. And you had the people who were saying that we don't want these asylum centres in our working class neighbourhoods. And you had the usual bust in wealthy aristocrats, minor aristocrats, lefties, NGOs, half of them on the payroll, brought in from posh neighborhoods to go far right, far right, far right, and call people gammons. Gammon is there's another one. That's working class. That's like the N word for a working class male in this part of the world, used by the Marxist NGOs, the ones who are working for the globalists, and Sinn Féin, for example. So, I was watching it last night, and I was watching carefully the videos of the left-wing globalist anti-Irish NGO types on the payroll with Paul Murphy, and they had a look in their face that looked very familiar. It was the look of defeat. Even when they were standing there, linking arms, calling people fascist and all this stuff, and talking about no hate here, they had no conviction in their eyes. And I say when the thing started, it was probably a 50-50 number between bust-in minor aristocrats and upper middle class types compared to the locals at the centre. But then something happened. People started leaving their houses all around City West and going down to the asylum centre to stand with the people protesting it in defiance. And by the time it was over, there was a much larger crowd than there was of the on the payroll government NGO traitors, basically. And they all walked away with their heads between their legs. And the locals and the people that protesting the asylum centre had a magnificent victory, and there was no violence, there was no real intimidation, there was just basically a standoff, and it was a battle of two energies. It was an energetic battle, and the one that won was the pure energy in alignment with natural law, and the other one, the one that failed, was a profane energy in violation of natural law. So one was in alignment with natural law, was in profanity with natural law. And even if take politics out of it, and if you have to bring a shaman from Africa or from the Siberia or anywhere, or any kind of medicine worker from the Native American tribes, and tell him and put him in between those two crowds, he would tell you right away which one is in the laws of nature and which one isn't. And the ones who were protesting this, the locals and the ones protesting the asylum centre, were in alignment with natural law. It was as clear as day. It was the most powerful thing to see, and I'm seeing it in our country now. And let me tell you a story. Those of you who've been following my videos since the Rona Chronicles back in 2020 when the first lockdown happened, I spoke to you, and those of you in Ireland will have seen this. The national TV station created a video, a promotional video, RTE, to warn about conspiracy theorists and misinformation spreaders online. Now, the piece of human excrement who works at that place, loaded with paedophiles and cokeheads and nepotism and cronyism, he's fucked off back to England. So he was brought in for a specific purpose as a British agent by the Irish media, RTE, to basically wage a propaganda war against the Irish. So this British agent that RTE brought in to attack us on behalf of their psychological terrorism regarding the Rona, I watched that video, and the first thing they show in that video is somebody online, and he's been threatened by what? The dangers of ancient Irish Celtic warriors. Yes, they showed two ancient Celtic warriors charging towards him, and then he goes to fact checkers and he disappears. Now, that told me one very powerful thing, that if there's one thing the Irish establishment, the treasonous NGO infested Irish establishment, who have an innate hatred of the Irish people because their ancestors all worked in Dublin Castle, working against the Irish, have of our people, and they learned it in 1916 with the likes of Patrick Pearse, is the terror of this ancient Celtic Gaelic spirit within us. They literally are traumatized by it, and they're terrified of it ever coming to the surface because they know the power of it freed this country, and we defeated the British Empire with it. They don't want us calling on the folk spirit of our people, so they declared it racist. So they were trying to make out that if you had any kind of affinity with your ancient Irish, Celtic, Gaelic ancestors, your warrior archetypes, you were the enemy of the state. And they played a fatal piece of black magic when they did that. When they brought that British agent into Ireland to attack the Irish people on behalf of RT and the Irish establishment, they basically self-hexed themselves, because the actual opposite happened. Those of us and people who followed my work and people like me suddenly said, no, wait a second, we're not going to be made ashamed of our heritage. It's not going to happen. You can make all the reenactment shows on TG Car, the Irish language station, with a black girl playing Queen Maeve. It's not going to change that. It's not going to change the folk spirit of our people. And this changed everything. And I saw that folk spirit emerge, especially last night at City West. There was a kind of this is another reason I don't like, Burke and his family, because they're fanatical Christians. They go after powerful archetypes, such as the Morrigan. In fact, there might even be a video of one of the Burke somewhere attacking the Morrigan, saying it's bad because it represents battle rage. Whoa, hold on a second. And that's what I've been warning about these Christians and this Christian cult, is that it makes you weak. Love thy neighbor. Turn the other cheek. Take up thy bed and give it to the poor. That's now been weaponized into Irish people on the streets, refugees in five-star hotels with no passports. Now, I'm not putting you down if you're a Christian or a Catholic or Protestant. It's nothing to do with that. I'm just saying that's the game that was played. Excuse me, but it's ancient Irish Morrigan battle rage that will save our people. It saved us in the past. There's nothing wrong with battle rage when your government is actively involved in your extermination on behalf of the World Economic Forum. There's nothing at all wrong with battle rage. Notice has been served in the last few weeks, but it was especially served last night at City West. Ireland has become something of a beacon for the rest of Europe right now. And this is especially terrifying for the establishment, because it's almost like a dysfunctional family. Think of the Irish establishment, the government and all the rest of them, as an abusive father who's battering his children. But then he goes out in the neighborhood and he's the father of the year, right? And then eventually some of the kids go to the neighborhoods and said he's not like that. He beats the shit out of us. He beats and he loves everyone. You know, so those fathers who those fathers who love everyone else's kids but their own. Those types of parents that like that. Well, that's what the Irish establishment are with the Irish people. And what's happening is through through social media and these protests, the Irish people have informed the world that the Irish state, the Irish establishment, is an abusive parent. And rather than them getting their ass kicked at Davos and Brussels, they're now being seen in a very different light around the world. And they don't like that because they're so deeply insecure and so obsessed with their public image that they can't afford this to happen. Now, pardon me, I have got numerous messages from ordinary people all over Europe. No, they're not far-right Nazis. No, they're not BNP. No, they're not the National Front in England. There are people, women in Germany, who send me news reports that from local newspapers of horrific crimes, sexual, murderous violence crimes that happened in German cities that only make it to the local media but are ignored by the national media because the national media was report these horrific crimes in Germany against ordinary Germans by these refugees. It would blow their image of these being these most sainted creatures that ever walked the face of the earth. They're all these. There's so many comments left on my videos and others by people who are not Nazis, who are not bigots, who are not anything. I mean, if you go to look at the Ballymun protest, there was black people and Slavic people in that group protesting the asylum centre. Why should someone who's come to Ireland legally has to pay all those fees, probably pay a lawyer, go through the system, and then finally get their papers to like work here, sit there and someone who hasn't even got a passport comes off the plane and Roderick O'Gorman, when he's not promoting drag queen story time, gives them a free ride in life when they have to work through the system, come here as real immigrants. Does anybody care about them? Ironically, it's the ones that you're calling far right are the ones who care about them. They're the ones who care about them. The real, genuine immigrants. Not someone who's their passport in a bin at Dublin Airport and go, I am from Ukraine. This kind of thing. Now, there's a thing that there's no room to put up. They're trying to make it. They're making a sob story now that there's no more room to put the Ukrainians who look like they come from sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm not putting down people in sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. I'm just saying there's a dishonesty there. From the moment they enter the country, there's criminality. They've destroyed their passport and they're pretending they're someone they're not. Okay, and so that's what I find incredible, where people who've legally immigrated here from all over the world are treated like criminals until they get their papers. It's not easy to immigrate here through the normal means, but show up with no passport. Roger O'Gorman has sent the message out to the world. Sinn Féin has sent the message out to the world. Come and replace these horrible Irish. Sinn Féin's motto is Irish out, everyone else in. Now, and they'll never survive this. They're finished. They're finished. They may think they're getting away with it. Now they're finished in the south of Ireland. But you're now getting more and more people who are coming out to join the protests, mainly because at first they would have been scared away, saying, "Oh, they would have heard the far right, they're far right," and then saying, "No, these people aren't far right," and then they're also seeing the crimes and everything that are going on, and then they're seeing the very sinister individuals who are behind all this. They're the same people who want to sexualize their children in school. And they're going, hold on a second, I just want to send my kids to school and, be able to live a life. Why am I suddenly being told I'm racist and evil? And this kind of thing. Now, a friend of mine made a very good point. He said, we kind of lost faith in the Irish people because of the lockdowns. But then he made a good point. He says, a lot of them are doing it because they love their grannies and they love their kids and they were just trying to protect them from disease. And now I see that. Maybe I was a bit harsh back then, but now they're coming out in droves. Now, I'm not a narcissistic nationalist. I'm not a jingoistic person. I'm not Mr. like we Irish are great, Irish are brilliant, and everyone else is a dickhead. I'm not one of those types. And if you follow me for years, it's the last thing I am. I'm not bothered by it. But I don't think I'm better than anyone else because I don't think any race is better than any other race. But every race has a unique destiny. Every race has a unique destiny. For instance, the Ukrainian race's destiny is to eliminate and slaughter Jews. If you look at Ukrainian history, it's nothing more than anti-Semitic pogroms. A Ukrainian literally is from the time they're born is raised to hate and kill Jews, and these are the people that you're supposed to love. But I guarantee you, go look at the history of Ukraine in World War II, and suddenly this image of these gentle folk, these gentle, peaceful folk who bothered nobody, suddenly goes out the window. Oh my God! The SS actually considered the Ukrainian police service to be sadistic, to be too sadistic. And in fact, all around Europe, where Germans and the SS refused to actually kill women and children, Ukrainians were often employed to do this. These beautiful sainted beings of light and purity. That's all been hidden from your mass media. But go look it up. Look up Babia. Babiya, I think. It was a popular book in the 70s all about it. I had to put the book down when I was reading it as a kid. It actually traumatized me. There's photographs in there of what Ukrainians were doing to Jewish people at this ravine, this ditch in Odessa. And that's why the Russians don't like the Ukrainians. That's why a lot of people don't like the Ukrainians. They have a vicious history of Jew killing that's unparalleled. And so, they're all sainted beings of light. Hang up your yellow and blue flag. It's all wonderful. Why? Well, it just is. And it's just the people are starting to realize this now. That and one of the and basically the Nazis had taken over Ukraine before the Russian invasion, and if you do the base, and this was the European newspapers prior to the Russian invasion were all full of Ukraine is going to the shit. There's actually nationalist race, open Nazi control of the country happening now, and then suddenly when Putin invades, they're all beautiful sainted beings of light. You see how you're fucking. Now, I'm not saying every Ukrainian person's like this, but you see how you're manipulated. You see how you're fucking manipulated. And Babia, go read it up. You don't believe me? Oh, far right. This kind of those types. They'll never do it. But someone with a consciousness and an ability to think will do it. So every race has a destiny. Okay, and Ireland's destiny seems to be a repository of the ancient. This country used to pride itself on being the last outpost of Celtic culture. Not just the language and not just that music, but poetry and the Celtic way of thinking and doing things. The world of the bard. I mean, we exported our bards into the world until recently. Dave Allen, who was a very popular comedian and talk show host, was a classic example of an Irish shanachie, a bard. So it's like Terry Wogan and people like that on the BBC. That was the Celtic way being brought back to people in Britain to see, like, this is what we're like. This is what we're really like. And naturally people in Britain rallied around the likes of, Dave Allen and even Spike Milligan to a degree, because they said there's something in that reminds us of our own past. There's something in our own ancient Celtic past in Britain. And so I'm getting so many messages from people all over Europe, but a lot from Germany, an awful lot from Germany, mainly women, saying, thank you, Ireland. Thank you for standing up for us at last. And once again, Ireland is the beacon. We've lit the beacon, just like we did in the Middle Ages. See, when the so-called Dark Ages happened, and they weren't really that dark, but what happened was it was a collapse of basically the old Roman Christian Empire in the West, the Byzantine Empire, stuff in the East. But Ireland maintained cultural artifacts and things that had been lost in Europe. The most visible one of them was the Round Towers. There's nothing comparable anywhere in Europe to the Round Towers of Ireland, that they could build these buildings that were literally, they were the skyscrapers, they were the World Trade Center, they were the Empire State Buildings of their period. They were so tall, these freestanding towers. Some of them, come to Ireland and see them, you won't believe what you're looking at. And this thing was built, God, they don't even know when they were built. But that was that legacy of the Roman Empire, the greatness of that kind of classical world. I consider the Round Towers of Ireland as part of that great European pre-Christian culture that was retained into the Middle Ages and beyond. Same with the Irish crafts, the artwork. You had like, well into the Christian period, you had this what you call the Celtic art. Well, that was based originally on the Hallstatt school, the culture, right going right back into the early Iron Age in Switzerland. The Celtoid people, and we were keeping Celtic art alive until we brought it back to Europe. We kept things like it's not something I'm particularly happy about, but things like the synoptic gospels were kept in Ireland, but it's still part of our legacy to bring things back. We were a repository for when Europe had fallen into shadow, and then we became a beacon in the last, and that's why this is so important to the era of Ireland going from paganism to Christianity. That 500 years or so period is actually a very powerful one, because Irish monks and also Irish, Field, which were druids, they were secular druids, went all over Europe and brought back wisdom and knowledge that had been lost in all the turmoil in Europe and European wars following the collapse of Rome. And then the Persians brought it from the east through as well through the Byzantine Empire. But we were a beacon. We were a beacon, and that's why that's why we were called the land of saints and scholars. That's not a lie. And art was kept alive here. Ancient European art, language, music, uh, everything was kept alive on this island until it was safe in Europe, and then we brought it back. Well, I'm sorry, I'm seeing that again now. Europe has been obliterated by open borders emigration, and the European peoples have been openly assaulted by their own government and establishment, who told them they're scum, they're racist, they're far right, they're animals, they're back, they don't have a place in the future, and this kind of thing. And it's what's happened again. Small protests in Ireland by nearly exclusively working class people have lit a beacon that's now been noticed. You know, that scene in Lord of the Rings where light the beacon and Rohan will answer, and the beacon was Frodo and Sam went up on the top of the tower and lit the beacon, and then it happened. They got Gondor answered. Well, Gondor is answering. Because if my emails and messages and comments on my videos are anything to go by, lots of people, particularly in England, and it's all over England, not just the north of England, but all over England, are like, thank you, Ireland, well done. We need that here. We need that. We need that. And that's because a folk spirit was awoken in the Irish people that because of our unique history, we never had an empire. And we've had you can't tell. Look, there's no way the Irish establishment working on behalf of the globalists are going to tell the Irish people who, around me now in my property, there are hundreds of bodies and skulls from the famine. They're dead. They died in the ditches across the road there, trying to get to the workhouse. There's no way that you can tell a people who went through that 150 years ago that we owe the world something when we got no help from no one. Half of the country went and emigrated, and you can imagine that half the country, and then the rest of us stayed. We were the ones who stayed and built the country up from devastation, and we owe the world something when we had no help from no one, none. You're trying to tell me that we who stayed and had famine wakes for millions of our ancestors as they got onto boats to Boston and Liverpool and New York and Sydney and the Caribbean, that we owe the world something? You're going to tell a people who never had an empire to invade the world, that never went out and exploited indigenous cultures, that never went out and conquered developing nations and left them in ruins like the way the European powers have left Africa. Are you telling me we owe something? No, no, you've really pushed the limit there too far. And then that our ancestors who didn't have fucking nothing went up against the British Army in the streets of our cities and in the hills and mountains of Kerry and West Cork. and then boycotted. You remember that? That's along with the fighting, the main reason why the Irish defeated the British Empire was Irish people said, no more. No, we're not using your post offices. We're not doing anything. Irish train drivers said, we're not transporting British troops anymore. No, you can walk. If you want to attack towns in County Cork like Fermoy and Mallow, you can fucking walk. We're not taking you on the trains. They wouldn't use the post offices. They wouldn't do anything. And eventually, guess what? The entire British, within no time, it was literally only Dublin was in the hands of the British, and they ended up giving up that as well after Collins started hitting the civil servants in Dublin Castle with the Cairo gang and all this. And when you look at Sinn Féin today, you see the Cairo gang of the day. These Cairo gang were a group of British agents that were sent in at the very end after the Black and Tans and the auxiliaries had been wiped out by the Irish IRA and the Irish insurgency forces. What was left was something called the Cairo Gang, and they were basically in British agents. And they got the name the Cairo Gang because they used to have their meetings at tea rooms in Dublin called the Cairo Cafe. It was a cafe tea rooms, and they were literally the intelligence service that was keeping the British power in Ireland, and that's what Collins had assassinated and taken out, and that was the end of the British Empire in most of Ireland anyway. The north was a different thing, but the south of Ireland. And when you look at those people who are standing on Stephen's Greens calling far right, look at just what he is like, that's today's Cairo gang. When you see Roger O'Gorman talking about, and other junior ministers within the government talking about, we will bring in as many refugees or asylum seekers as possible, that's today's Cairo gang. When you see Micheál Martin standing in the Irish Dáil and going, we will have no talk of backward-looking sovereignty, that's today's Cairo gang. They're all today's Cairo gang, okay? And the Cairo gang were doomed because all those types are always doomed because they're on the wrong side of history. They're profane to natural law. And that was blatantly obvious last night at City West. You could see the looks on those faces of those left-wing NGO protesters, hatred, the bust-in Cairo gang with Paul Murphy. You could see defeat in their eyes from the moment they stood there. They knew that some basic law of the universe was against them. They couldn't articulate it, but you could see it in their eyes, that their moronic NPC chanting was literally a robot repeating a computer script. So we've lit the beacon in Ireland. We've lit the beacon. And I think the groups around the country have been exceptional. And they've done it without any violence. They've just simply shown up. And this whole thing, that the left were particularly terrified. How dare they bring? How dare a Foxrocks action? Did you see the left? Did you see those fascists in Ballymun? Oh, those fascists, the far right fascists in Ballymun. They brought their children up. They brought their far right. They brought their children up. Yes. The only reason the left were pissed off by the kids being there is they knew that meant there was going to be no violence. And they wanted violence so they could bash a fascist. Punch a Nazi! Punch a Nazi! They were furious that the riots, the children were there because their parents loved them. But they also provided an insurance policy. The Garda and police and military riot squads weren't going to go into a gang with women and children. The people of Ballymun, Eastwall, Finglas, Ballyferm and Clondalk and Talla, and now City West and Fermoy have played a fucking blinder. Because they wanted the NGO left-wing pedophile agenda wanted nothing but males in those far right groups, so they could send the cops in, the army in, and their own Antifa, bunch of Nazi, those types in. But that's now been taken from them by the fact that these people are so much more intelligent. They brought children along. And any police that charges a group of kids in it, or a military group, or even left-wing group that does that, the whole world will turn against you. You'll be all over the news. Attacking a group of children in it? Why? Well, they were protesting an asylum centre. You attacked a group of children, and that's why those left-wing NGO types had that look of terror in their faces. And then they tried to switch around by saying that how dare they protest the asylum centres with just all the women and children in it. In fact, Bohemians Football Club, a wing of Sinn Féin People Before Profit Party, which whom I no longer support, uh, they sent toys to the East Wall Centre to create a public impression that that East Wall Centre was full of like women and children, when it was full of males in their 20s and 30s. And that's what's another thing that people have figured out. You see how devious that the Bohemians were? They actually got a toy drive for these asylum centres. What's a 35-year-old Somalian from Ukraine going to do with an Etch-a-Sketch? Or a Fisher-Price PlayStation? They've been found out. Their games are not working. Their games, but it all went back to that initial RTE promo, which said, if you believe or have a respect or call upon your ancient Irish, Celtic and Gaelic ancestors, your warrior folk spirit, you're far right and you're spreading misinformation. They rolled the ball way too much with that one. And that's what lit the beacon in the hearts of the Irish people who still care about their country. I had to deal with someone recently who looked me up and down like I was a fucking animal. This person grew up in Rhodesia in Africa, in the British Empire, on Papa's colonial attaché, where she would have had manservants and coolies, and probably even call them Kaffirs, okay? But she's now set herself up as an anti-Naziist in Ireland, when she came from extreme privilege in British colonies. And me from Ballymun are going to be looked up and down by an animal like that. Fuck you. Fuck you. Okay? Fuck you. I didn't grow up like that. I didn't grow up. That's what you'll find. These are the ones who had, like especially the British ones. They would have had their families would have had, they would have worked in the colonies where father had coolies on the veranda serving him Pimm's #1, and now they're all over here. Now their ancestors are here today going, far right, And it's the same with the ones who want the 15-minute cities and keep us all as carbon serfs in a ghetto. But instead of being kept in the ghetto as Jews, we're kept in our 15-minute ghetto as potential or provisional carbon criminals. Well, you'll find that the ones who are pushing these laws, it was their families who caused the urban sprawl and the 2-hour commutes to begin with. They're always blaming us for problems that they created. Remember that. And the successive generation, instead of, just like the whole thing of Black Lives Matter, all these posh rich people whose families had slaves attacking working class people and calling them Gemmons, who didn't have nothing, who were in England, who were in the mines of like, Newcastle, or the steel mills of like Sheffield, or the factories and mills of like Preston and Manchester and Liverpool, and then, or all over England, in the south as well, and then being called big gammons by people whose ancestors had the slaves. Ireland gladly has, speaking as an Irish person who's not jingoistic, has been all over the world, has lived all over the world, has even the developing world has been there, seen these people. It was a great love for the human race in all different cultures. I just say, I'm glad we've lit the beacon, and I'm glad you're answering the call. It's all over. It's all over, globalists. It's only the means of your exit. Whether you want to be make it as painful or as less painful as possible, it is over, and it starts in Ireland and it spreads to the rest of Europe. Sanguine gnosis.